Welcome everybody to the Single and Stilettos show. I'm Suzanne Oshima and I'm a matchmaker and dating coach at Dream Bachelor and Bachelorette, and I'm also the founder of Single and Stilettos. Today on our show we have Damona Hoffman, and she's a dating strategist at dearmrsd.com, and I'm so excited to have her here today because she's going to give us 7 amazing tips on how to find love online. So welcome, Damona, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we get started, I would love for you to just tell our audience how you got into this business and what your background is.
Well, it's a little bit different than other dating coaches. I actually started out as a casting director. And I used to teach classes for actors and how to market themselves because I found there were really talented actors that didn't know what to do to get themselves noticed by a casting director like myself. So as I was doing that, I was online dating at the same time, and I started to see the similarities between a headshot and a dating profile photo. And when I started applying the same techniques I used to teach actors to my own dating life, I met my husband online in 2003, and I've just been doing the same thing for other people ever since.
Oh, that's great. Now, what site did you meet him on?
I met him on nerve.com.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people, it's kind of underground now, but, from 10 years ago, it was sort of the OkCupid of 10 years ago.
Right.
But he was actually the only one that I met from that site. I dabbled in a lot of sites, but just kind of a testament to trying different things and always staying positive.
Right. And I guess you're a success story of online dating. And it's funny because a lot of my clients will say to me if they haven't tried online dating that they're really scared to try online dating. So let's get into the 7 tips that you have to help people find love online. And I know your first tip is communication before meeting, and I think that's key. So what are your tips to communicate with a guy online?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes I see online daters make is that they stay online too long. So they create this whole idea of a person in their head that doesn't really exist. So I recommend getting offline as quickly as possible. No more than 3 exchanges online before you move to a phone call. Some people are skipping the phone call and going for a text, but you really need to push forward to meet that person face to face and see if you have chemistry with them.
Right. Now, because I hear this a lot, too, from my clients that are online dating. They'll say, he just keeps sending me emails or he keeps texting me, and I don't know how to get him to ask me out. So what do you suggest women do to get him to ask her out?
Well, I find a lot of times women are kind of nervous about saying what they mean and, being too forward online. Right. You have to remember that online dating is not the courtship and all of the beautiful romance does not begin in the online phase. It begins when you meet face to face. So you have to remember you're dealing with a computer, you're dealing with algorithms that you can't control, you're dealing with a lot of competition and basically noise from other people that he's having to sort through. So you have to make sure that if you want to meet someone, you're very clear and persistent. If they don't respond, there's so many other online dating fish in the sea, so just move on to somebody else.
I think that's a great point because I think people tend to take things so personally about someone they've never met before. So great point. Yeah. So point number 2 is to tell the truth. So I'd love for you to give us your feedback on that.
This is a debate I often have with clients. I believe in truth in advertising, and in my new book, Spin Your Web, How to Brand Yourself for Successful Online Dating, I talk about thinking of yourself almost as a product that you're presenting online. So if you were shopping for a product and you read the description and then you ordered it and it came in the mail and it was totally different than what you ordered, you'd be pretty upset. So I look at online dating in the same way. If you are advertising truthfully, then there's a better chance that when you actually meet in person, you're going to connect. If you're telling lies, eventually they will catch up with you, and you can't really build a foundation for a great relationship on a lie. Yeah, there are a lot of people that are lying online, but it doesn't mean you have to give into it and be one of them.
I think I love your analogy. That's hilarious because I actually used to work in advertising, so I think that's really funny. But one of the things that I find that women always feel that they want to fib a little bit about is their age. And women in their 40s will tell me, well, the guys don't pay attention to me if I write down my real age and I don't look my real age. So what if I just put 38? Is that okay?
It's funny because people say this to me a lot, and they'll just want to fudge by like 2 years, and ultimately those 2 years don't matter a lot. I do see
Hmm.
when women usually get about over 35, they will see their incoming messages drop off.
Hmm.
And this is just because of the way that men are searching.
Right.
But there actually was a study recently that statistically men will respond to a woman if she's older than what the range that they're searching, if they are attracted to her. So it's just a lesson that sometimes if we're over 35, we do have to be a little bit more proactive in sending those messages. But I actually encourage women of all ages to send messages and not just wait for the guys to write to them, because again, you're dealing with a computer, and you exponentially increase your chances if you make yourself visible to them, because the computer might not be showing you to them in the first place.
So it's about being more proactive than reactive, right?
Isn't that what it's about in everything in love? Yeah.
Exactly. So I know your third tip is to be more inclusive, and I love this tip because I think people are way too picky. So can you give us your feedback on that?
Yeah, this is also a sticking point for a lot of people. But what we tend to do online is we will search for a very narrow search criteria. He needs to be 35 to 40. He needs to make this much money. He needs to be within 10 miles of me. And then I always hear from daters, there's nobody online for me to date. I can't find anybody that I'm attracted to. And sometimes if you just stretch your criteria a little bit, you can find that there are a lot more options available to you. And really, that beginning part of just, doing the searches and getting the communication going isn't really the place to start making judgments about people, because a lot of times you'll find that they're not really the same way they appeared on paper anyway, for better or for worse. So it's really about getting as many people into the funnel as possible and then making the selections as you get to know them down the road.
I think that's such a great point. And the other thing that I want to bring up to our audience is, because I tell this to my clients all the time, is, okay, if you have this long list of criteria of everything that the guy should have, you have to think, now that you've narrowed that down, of that small amount that fits that criteria, do you actually fit his list of criteria? And now you just narrowed it even more. So your chances of meeting the right person are so narrow. So it's true, you really do have to open things up in order to meet the right person.
Yeah, and ultimately, really what you're building a relationship on are common values. And so, hair color, eye color, height, that doesn't really matter when you're looking for a husband who's going to be with you when you're 90 years old. You want to make sure that you have the same point of view on life, that share the same thoughts about faith and even the way that you spend money. Those kind of things are really more long-term predictors than, you both like to play tennis.
All right. Or I've had people say, oh, I don't date lawyers, or I don't date whatever his profession is. And I'm like, that doesn't make who he is. That's not who he is as a person.
Yeah, you bring up such a good point, because people make judgments about their future based on their past. So
Exactly.
if you get really caught up in what your ex didn't do, or what annoyed you about your ex, it can actually block you from meeting someone that could be wonderful for you, that maybe shares some common traits or interests as your ex did.
Exactly. So, ladies, you need to open up. So let's talk about the first date. So I know you have a tip on the best first date.
Well, yeah. You have to keep that first date short. And this is actually for online or offline dating.
Okay.
But I find that too many people wear out their welcome on that first date. And it's really just a chance for you to check one another out, see if there's interest in spending more time, and make sure everything lines up with the profile. So do something that's just going to take about an hour, something like a cup of coffee or a drink, maybe going to get some ice cream, but you don't want to go through having a whole dinner with someone and then you're sitting there waiting for the dessert to come and looking at the clock wondering when it's going to be over. Plus, then you might be setting up expectations for him that, if you're not interested in, are never going to come to fruition. So just keep it short and let the relationship develop over time.
I think that's a great point. Now, Let me ask you a question about the first date. So let's say a woman goes out on a first date and she feels like, oh my God, there's no chemistry. I have no interest in this guy. What's a good way for her to end the first date without being, not very nice?
Oh, that's good. I always say have an exit strategy.
Exactly. So what is it?
You have to pre-plan that you have somewhere that you're coming from and somewhere that you're going to. And that way he's not offended if you cut the date short. But if you say, oh, I'd love to see you tomorrow. I do have to get up for an early morning meeting, or, I do have to help my sister out with something afterwards, but I'd love to meet you for an hour for coffee. And so then if you're not having fun, you get to that, 50-minute mark, and then you say, my sister's really counting on me. Thank you so much for the date, and I'll talk to you later. And you get the heck out.
I think that is so great, that to have an exit strategy is so important, because I could just see a lot of women on a date going, oh my God, how do I get out of this? And they start panicking in their head and they're not even listening to anything that he's saying.
Yeah, you can always do I have to go to the restroom, and then, or I'm getting a call, and, I have come down with something, or my friend needs me to come and pick her up, whatever it is. But, that's like an emergency situation. But I find if you pre-plan, which a lot of people don't do when they get to the date, or before they get to the date, if you pre-plan, you will save yourself a lot of stress.
I think that's great. I love that. So let's talk about tip number 5. And I think this is key for a lot of women, because a lot of women are scared about online dating, is safety. So talk to me about safety.
Okay. Well, we've all heard the catfishing stories, or, the story about the woman who got attacked from someone she met online, or taken advantage of. And you hear those stories because they are unusual. For the most part, most of the people that you're going to meet online are there for the same reasons that you are, to meet someone, either to be in a relationship with or to have sex with, but you'll have to determine that as you get down the road. But really, if you follow some basic rules of safety, you can really protect yourself from a lot of risk. Most of the dating sites actually have a link. Most people don't know, but they advertise at the bottom, their safety tips. Okay. But just meet someone there. Don't ever let them pick you up, even if you feel like, oh, I've been talking to them for a couple days and now I feel comfortable, or they know a friend of a friend. Just don't do it for the first one. Right. Meet them there. Tell someone where you're going and when you're going to be back. And, make sure you check in with them afterwards, and they'll know if you don't check in that something may have gone wrong. And never for any reason give anybody money that you've met online. And, most of the scams that we hear, particularly divorced women and widowed women and women over 50, are huge targets for scammers. And they'll scam you online. They'll scam you anywhere where there's a mass of people that they could take advantage of. But it's always the same story. They've never met you in person. They say everything you want to hear on the phone. And then suddenly after a month or 2 or 3, when you think that you're in a relationship with them, they ask you for money. But if you haven't met face to face, they're not your boyfriend, and they should not be getting any of your funds.
And I completely agree. And, and I find that whenever I give that tip to women, a lot of women will say, well, of course I wouldn't give money to a guy I've never met. You would be surprised. Once you get into it, it's like you said, and he starts saying the right things, you start to fall for him. And I will even go one step further, that even if you do meet him in person and you go out on a couple dates, if he starts asking for money too early in the relationship, then that's a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, really, you shouldn't be giving him money anyway.
Exactly.
Until you are in a serious relationship. Even then, it's more of commingling funds than here's $20 to pay your phone bill or something like that.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's go into tip number 6, which is drinking on a date. And I think this is key, because I think what a lot of women can do is get nervous on the date, so they might drink a little bit more than they usually would. So what's your tip on that?
This goes back to that pre-planning point that I made.
Yeah.
I always say set a maximum, a drink maximum for yourself, to the point where you know that you're not making decisions as clearly. For me, I'm a tiny person, so it was 1 drink for me, because I knew if I have that second drink, I'm going to start saying things I don't mean, doing things that I don't mean, and you really want to stay clear-headed on the date, for both for safety and for being able to really evaluate that person effectively and for them to evaluate you. So really set the limit before you get to the date so that you can really be present and be your best self too.
I think that's a great point, and I'll bring up another point. And if you keep the date short, you can't drink a lot, right?
There you go. There you go.
So it's a double whammy there for keeping the date short. So the last tip is tip number 7, and it's about sex. So let's talk about if it's smart to sleep with a guy on a first date.
Well, it depends on what you want out of the relationship. But generally, if you are interested in someone for a long-term relationship, traditionally, you want to let the relationship develop over time. And this is something that's biological. There are hormones that are released that bond us to a man once we have sex with him. And, I see a lot of women that say, oh, I can have sex like a man. And, it goes against our biological conditioning. So I recommend waiting until you've gotten to know them, usually around date 5 or later, which a lot of people just gasp at me, date 5. But by that point, you've gotten to know them a little bit more without the confusion of sex. Because once you introduce sex into the relationship changes. And I guarantee you, if he's interested in you and you make him wait a little bit for it, he's going to be so much more into you than if you take away that mystery right at the beginning.
It's so true. And I will add that most guys, if they're just in it for sex, will disappear after the 3rd date if they haven't gotten it. So
yeah, I always say the 3rd date is really the deciding point. Yeah. That's when it's make it or break it time. So if you make him wait a couple dates more, then you'll know if he's going to be your boyfriend or, just some guy you met online.
Exactly. I love these tips. These were so great to help women succeed online and help them find love. So give us your last best dating tip for women. The
best dating tip. Okay. With online dating, since that's what we've been talking about, I find that the biggest mistake people make is having a bland profile. So what people try to do, women want to be inclusive to everybody, and so they'll almost negate what they say by making a statement and then saying the opposite. I'm just as comfortable in heels as I am in a pair of sweats. We've all heard these, but everybody does it.
Right.
And you're actually going to get more responses if you're more specific, if you pick one side of the road. And people think, oh, well, then I'll be turning certain people off. But that's good. You want to turn off the wrong people and you want to turn on the right people. So be more specific rather than trying to be everything to everybody.
That, and that's funny because that goes along the same lines as advertising practices. When you're trying to target a market, you're very specific. You don't go super broad, right?
There you go. Know your audience. Right.
Exactly. So that's a great dating tip. So now how can our audience find you?
Well, I have a lot of tips and exercises on dearmrsd.com. I often do workshops and I do personal coaching. And I would love to offer any of your followers a free gift. I have videos and different premiums that people can get on my website on dearmrsd.com, including one called the 5 biggest online dating mistakes you're probably making right now and what to do about them. So I'd love for them to check it out on dearmrsd.com.
Great. So everybody go to her site and check it out. Do you do sessions in person or over the phone? Do you work with people?
I do both.
Okay.
I do both. In LA, I have a team that does everything from wing woman sessions, night coaching, flirting coaching, and then I also do phone and in-person sessions for my clients.
Great. So anybody in the United States, you can just go to her website and contact Damona. That's great.
Thank you.
So thanks everybody for joining us on the Single and Stilettos show. This show is available as a podcast or as a video. If you're on the go, you might as well just grab the podcast, and it's downloadable on iTunes. And if you would like to grab our free report on the top 10 secrets on what attracts a man and what turns him off, you can click right here on the video.